So here we are having a very natural conversation.
Hi, Jeff.
Hi. Hi, Mario. Nice to see you. Hi, Kevin.
Hi, Jeff.
I think maybe for the interest of cutting around things, but why don't we just give a little introduction, like where you grew up and sort of how you arrived at Oakland in the year 2022.
Sure. So I'm Mario Godoy. I'm a composer, saxophonist, and various audio and musical thing doer. I came to the Bay Area in 2011 to study at the San Francisco Conservatory of Music. I graduated from there in 2013 and have just stuck around ever since. Made a lot of great friendships, and I now currently teach music at Maybeck High School in Berkeley, as well as Las Positas College in Livermore, and I do teach private lessons as well in saxophone, composition, electronic music production, and all sorts of fun things. So that's me.
That's great. And Kevin, why don't you do the same?
I'm originally from South Carolina, spent most of my life there, near the coast. And I went there for my undergraduate at the University of South Carolina, majored in violin performance. And there was sort of a big choice at that time for me where I could choose going down like a jazz free improvisation route and go to Cal Arts, or I could go to the San Francisco Conservatory of Music. And my thinking at the time was, well, it would be better for me to really master kind of this tradition of playing violin, the technique, the performance practice first, and that will help my improvisation. That turned out to not be true, but it was incredibly valuable still nonetheless. And I came to the conservatory. I knew I wanted to play chamber music because I've always been a fan of Kronos Quartet ever since I was getting into music, and I knew I wanted to play chamber music, specifically a string quartet, and do it with contemporary music. So I came to the conservatory because of the chamber program. It's really rich. And like Mario, I fell in love with the area and I stayed. I was there from 2009 to 2011, so Mario came right after I had graduated, and that's pretty much how I came to the area and came to love new music. It was just sort of from the very beginning. I was into it.
So can you talk a little bit, Friction Quartet is sort of a Bay Area institution at this point, mm-hmm. and especially in the world of contemporary music in the Bay Area. And I'm wondering, can you talk a little bit about why that happened and how that happened and sort of how that all got started?
Yeah. So Doug and I knew each other a long time ago. We both went to Eastern Music Festival when we were in high school. So we met when we were like 14 or something. And we didn't like click totally right away. We weren't like best buds, but we weren't enemies by any means. It was just sort of like, hey, you're nice, but we sort of just saw each other in passing. But we reconnected again at a summer festival in Italy. And while we were there, we were assigned to play chamber music, and we both had requested to play something more contemporary. We were assigned a Philip Glass quartet. And as we were working on it, Doug one day just said to me, hey, do you want to start a contemporary string quartet? And I was like, yeah, I would love to. Can you move to San Francisco? And he was like, I'm actually auditioning.
Hey.
So he was auditioning to study with Jennifer Culp, and we really connected playing contemporary chamber music. We had the same kind of values around art and music. So when he moved to San Francisco, we knew before he even got here that we were going to start the quartet. We were talking on the phone before he moved here. And then he was in school, I was out of school, and we were thinking a lot about how to get started as a string quartet with no money.
Right.
Especially because like what we want to do is play composers' music. Composers should get paid. We should get paid. How do we do this with no money? So at first it was sort of a like trade kind of thing, where like, hey, composer at SFCM, if you write this piece of music for us, we'll play it a lot.
Right. Win-win for everybody.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That was sort of the genesis. And it was through doing projects like that with composers we liked that we developed these early relationships. And one of those relationships was Mario, actually. One of the first quartets we ever played was his string quartet number 1. And over time, those relationships went from, hey, trading to, we'll fundraise and pay you for this.
Right.
I officially started writing this piece a year later, about 2018, and it took it took about 2 years to write completely. Because like I said, I'm a full-time high school teacher.
Right, yeah.
And I also teach a college course. So like I don't have all day to devote to composing. So it did take me about 2 years to complete this piece from start to finish. And it's a complicated piece to really explain, but I will do my best. So it's called Attention Economy, and it is a sort of self-reflective look. It's self-reflective, but it's also sort of reflective on society as a whole, at our collective addiction to technology and how we consume information. So it's organized into 4 movements. The first movement is called newsfeed, so it's supposed to represent like just the constant deluge of information that's just being given to us at any time, whether it's like, you know, something terrible, or if it's just like pictures that your aunt posts on Facebook, right? It's all just coming at you and in various ways. And to me, that's incredibly overwhelming, but I don't stop doing it. You know what I mean? Like I'm still on my phone, I'm still scrolling, and I'm just like, this sucks. I hate it so much. Okay, what's next? You know?
Yeah.
So that first movement is sort of an onslaught of notes. It's just like a lot of notes, but every so often you can sort of pick out little themes that will be reflected or, you know, spun out. There's this constant dee-da-da-da-dum, right? That's sort of the descent into madness in a way, but not as dire.
Can I make a comment about that?
Yeah.
Because there's this interesting compositional feature, which is there's often like another instrument playing it after one instrument plays it. So like the piece starts with me playing beat-a-dum, and then Otis plays beat-a-dum right in a row. So it's like beat-a-dum, beat-a-dum.
Yes.
And what's interesting to me about that, like when I think about a news feed, right? There's the first thing that happens, which is you see it. But then the second thing that happens is you sort of judge it, right? Like, I like this, I don't like this, whatever. And it's whenever I play that movement, that's what it feels like. Like internally, it's like the first iteration is just the you see it. And the second one is like, okay, this is how I feel about it. So it's really interesting that you have that material sort of repeating and going in pockets and stuff.
Yeah, I really love that. What it was like, my initial thought was like, oh, it's sort of echo chambery, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Like you see something, you repeat it, you regurgitate it, it changes, right? Because I saw this one article on whatever Vice, I'm going to regurgitate it in some different way that is supposed to represent that, but it really is something completely different, you know, and we see that a lot from our relatives on the various social medias, and you know, I won't go too much into that, but yeah, so there is this echo chamber aspect in the middle of the piece when things start to sort of get together a little bit. There's a section that I like to call the rabbit hole. Right, and this is where the meter changes in the middle, where we get into this like da 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 da. It sort of starts to groove together a little bit more, but it still doesn't feel settled. Right, so it's locked together, but it doesn't feel settled at all. You sort of feel like it's, I don't know, you're trapped in a way. It's not a happy feeling, but I really love the way it grooves. So that's that movement, is newsfeed. Then it goes to the second movement, which is elegy. The elegy movement is something that I've been wanting to write for a long time. I first wanted to write an elegy just of some kind after the ghost ship fire in Oakland. I think that was 2016. And I was just like, I didn't know how to process those feelings, those emotions. You know, these were artists, these were musicians, these were people just living and being in a community that, you know, tragically lost their lives. And I didn't know how to process that, so I was like, maybe I should just write something. I stewed on that for a long time. Then 2018 came, and that was the shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. And as a high school teacher, like that really affected me, and that's when I finally said, like, I'm going to start writing this. So I started the initial sketches for that elegy right after that, 2018. I believe it's 2018 or 2019. One of those. What is time anymore? But yeah, I started after that incident, and it sort of, the elegy sort of became this, I hate to say it, but it's a general elegy, right? It's just an elegy for everything. Like there's so much bad stuff that happens every single day, and it is very overwhelming, especially over the last 2 years or 3 years, right? This piece was written pre-pandemic, I should mention.
Right, yeah.
Right, and it was premiered pre-pandemic, and since then it's sort of taken on a completely new meaning every time I hear it. But the third movement is called Screens, and it's just supposed to mimic like notification sounds or like the constant vibrating, just the constant pinging that we hear in our world. It doesn't sound exactly like that, but it's supposed to like bring that feeling alive. The piece goes between the second movement and the third movement without pause. It's a taka, and that's supposed to sort of represent how quickly we move on, like back to the cat videos, right?
Yeah.
So I actually really do enjoy Screens. There is a section in there that I call the cute section. I wrote that with the idea in mind that sometimes what we use as a babysitter is a screen. So kids grow up with screens. So that to me was like the kids version of the screen, and suddenly in that section, the cute section, it starts to warp and transform and get gritty and darker. But then eventually it returns to what it was before, all the vibrations and pinging sounds. And then finally, the last movement is Reset, which I say is just like an introspective moment to just sort of reflect on your own relationship with technology and how you can set goals for yourself, or just think about like what you can do to reset yourself. But it also is called Reset because, no matter how much we try to reset ourselves, we sort of reset the loop, right? And we kind of go back to the beginning. So yeah, that's the structure of this piece. It is, it's probably the most ambitious piece I've ever written. I'd love to write more things like it, but it's definitely unique in my sort of catalog right now.
That's great to hear, so much about the different movements. Is this the first piece that you've written that is this sort of, I don't want to say programmatic, but this sort of heavily like influenced by, things in the world?
Yeah, I'd say yes. Oftentimes when I'm writing music, I will just write things out and then kind of think about what this sounds like. I will say that there was a little bit of that, like with the first movement. Like I just sketched out a couple of little ideas, and then I was like, it's just like things just coming at you. What comes at you, right? And then that sort of started to shape the piece as a whole. So this is definitely probably the most programmatic piece that I have. So a lot of my other pieces are a little more abstract programmatically, like just things to think about while you're listening,
right? Yeah,
things like that. But this one is definitely, even though there's not necessarily a narrative arc throughout the piece, it really is like meant to, if not represent something specifically, represent my own feelings towards those things.
And a way of engaging with this thing that we're as humans and as a society are sort of like dealing with all the time, right? My group Splinter Reeds has played a piece of Mario's as well, and it's there's something about you have a very unique like approach to rhythm and meter, I think, and it's really it's challenging and it's really fun, and it's you give just enough groove that we feel like we can groove, but then you shake it up like right away so that we never fully like get into the groove. Like it's this very kind of like distorted groove kind of a feeling that is it's really fun to play, and I think audiences really like it as well.
You gotta keep them guessing.
It's like those TikTok videos.
But yeah, so I will say that rhythm, particularly interlocking rhythm, right, between voices is sort of like my thing. It's what I do without thinking.
Right.
It just happens naturally in all of my music. It's the thing that people think of first when they think of my music is the way that the rhythm works between the voices. Something that I've been told by numerous ensembles is that your music is really hard to practice individually, right? So like practicing my own part is really hard to do. I need the ensemble there. I don't know. Have you found that to be the case?
Yeah, the Splinter piece not as much, I think, but certainly like the second string quartet. you can practice your own part all the time, but trying to fit in the 16th note hocket is never going to work.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and part of that is because like as humans, we're not rhythmically perfect. In fact, like when you listen to a quote unquote rhythmically perfect electronic piece, a lot of times people don't like it. So like they actually have algorithms to make drum beats like sort of not perfect, so that it feels more natural to us. And that's kind of the challenge with like something really interlocking, like the first movement of attention economy. It's just 16th notes on every beat, right? And you know, you're just going beat-a-dee-doo-dee-doo-dee-doo. But those tiny variations between all of us doing that, and then making sure that we're hearing each other and predicting where the next beats are coming, and so that we can play together, that's definitely a challenge. And then to pair that also with like, it's also high on the violin, and playing that in tune is difficult because like the harmony that we're spelling out here is like a, you know, sort of like a E flat minor 7 or something like that.
Don't think about the harmony.
Yeah. But you know, minor 7s, you know, they're sort of difficult to tune, and then with all of the notes going on, you know, so it is challenging to like. I do need the quartet there to practice some of the things. That's important. I can play it with the metronome at home. I can play it with the drum at home, and it like feels really good. But yeah, you do need to play with everyone.
And there has to be sort of a, like the group has to have its own very highly developed sort of rhythmic identity, independent from the players, I think, to make it work. And I think that can be a challenge. If the group doesn't really know how to play rhythmically complex pieces together, they'll have a really hard time, I think, with your music, right?
Yeah.
You know, because everyone's little slightly different ways that they feel a 5/8 bar or something. If you're not locked into that, then it will immediately kind of fall apart. So it sort of takes a group, you know, like Friction, you know, who's really sort of spent the time to develop that as individuals and as a group, so that then they can, you know, they take that on.
Yeah, and I think it was important, or I mean, it is important to note that like I wrote this piece specifically for Friction because I knew that they could do it.
Yeah.
Right, and like I will say that after that first quartet, when I first gave it to them and I heard them play it, I was just like, oh my God, I have never heard my music played this good in my life.
Right.
So even hearing Kevin say like we were really bad at it, I was blown away. I was like, I've never heard my music played this well in my life, and I want these people to be my friends. You know, I want to be able to work with these people. So like, you know, me stepping up my compositional voice, but also like knowing that I can challenge Friction to do something really challenging. And they'll just say, sure, we'll give it, we'll do our best, and we'll give it our all.
And how much sort of back and forth was there during the compositional process? Did you share sketches with them, or did you just like deliver the final thing?
There was a good amount of workshopping. There wasn't a whole lot, but there was a good amount. So I would come to their rehearsals and say, here's the first movement. You know, draft 1, and you know, we would make changes. I would say, you know, don't do the open snap pits, do the snap pits stopped or whatever. You know, that's going to have a better snap to it or something. And so we would make changes in the score right there, and then I say, okay, and then here's like the first 10 measures of this movement. Wait, can I just hear how it sounds? And then they would play it, and I'd just be like, okay, good.
Well, thanks for chatting, and we hope you enjoy the performance.
Thank you, Jeff, for asking these incredible questions.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to talk with both of you.
Yeah.